When life gets unpredictable, preparation matters. In medicine, it's all about staying alert, ready for whatever comes through the door. On the road, it's no different. That's why Volvo designs vehicles to help anticipate risk, reduce harm, and protect lives. The Volvo XC90's advanced safety systems inspire confident decisions wherever the road takes you. The Volvo XC90, for life. Proud sponsor of the Pit Podcast. Learn more at volvocars.ca/safety.
Well, we might be out of the holiday season, but who can forget the massive winter storm of a few weeks ago, and combined with some incompetence on the part of transit companies in this country, left hundreds of passengers stranded for hours and even days. Main passengers affected, those who chose to travel with Via Rail or Sunwing. Now, Liberal MP Peter Schiefke is calling out both companies, saying they must answer for unacceptable delays and cancellations. And Peter Schiefke, the MP for Vaudreuil-Soulanges, joins us on the line. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me alive.
Now, I've known you since my high school days. We didn't go to the same high school, but I think I've known you for decades now. Can I call you Peter?
You can definitely call me Peter, and I will say I have many more gray hairs than I did when we first met. So.
Absolutely. Same here, Peter. Let's start off here. Before we get into Sunwing and Via Rail and all those specifics, Peter, I want to ask you more of a broader question here. What is the role of government to making sure these things don't even happen in the first place?
So that's a really good question, and that's actually one of the primary reasons why I initially announced that I was going to call this special meeting on January 3rd. We have a big role to play. One of the things that the Government of Canada did back in 2019 was, for the first time ever, put in place a passenger bill of rights. And prior to that, essentially, it was kind of a mishmash of companies announcing their own policies with regards to reimbursements and compensation and services offered should there be any kind of a delay or interruption to their travel. What we did was we put in place the passenger bill of rights, and essentially it codified a standardized level of service that Canadians can expect. So, if you wait X amount of time, if your flight is canceled for X number of reasons, here's what you're entitled to. It made it easier for Canadians to understand. It also made it easier for them to understand when they had access to any kind of recourse through the Canadian Transportation Agency or through the company itself. What happened over the holidays, when it came to my attention through the hundreds of emails that I received, not just as the MP for my riding, but also as the chair of the Transport Committee, showed a complete disregard for the rules and regulations and the rights that were codified for Canadian travelers back in 2019. And so I announced that I would be holding a special meeting to call Sunwing, many of the other airline companies, Via Rail, as well as the airport authorities in Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and the Canadian Transportation Agency and officials from the Department of Transport to figure out exactly what went wrong. Because what happened was completely unacceptable. Not only at the basic level were travelers not even given responses to basic questions like, what am I supposed to be doing right now, for those, for example, affected in Mexico, where they were literally just, their flights were canceled and then Sunwing went silent. But following that with recourse, the delays have been in the weeks, and only now are they starting to get information from the companies as to what they're going to be entitled to.
Here's the issue that I have, Peter, and that is, you mentioned the air passenger rights bill. Now, we've been doing this segment in transit since we started this show. It's 4 years of doing the segment. Every time we've spoken to people that are advocates for air passengers, they've told me on this program that the law your government passed is basically toothless. When it comes, whether it's cancellations and getting your money back, when we've had guests to talk about lost luggage and delays with luggage, they've come on the program and they've said all the regulations that we have are toothless, and that if you want, and they've literally told me this, if you want to get your money back, be prepared to go to small claims court. So that's why it brings me back to the first question here. What's the role of government here? It's all fine and dandy if you pass these laws, but clearly, right, the airlines are sending the message, whatever these laws are, we don't have to follow them. It doesn't work, right? So I think what Canadians are demanding is when are airlines, or it's Via Rail or whatever, when will they have to actually listen to laws that have some teeth into them and not just say, we won't follow it. Good luck trying to get your money back.
So that's actually a really good question, and it's something that in the research that we've done as the committee over the last couple of months, because this is now going to be a part of a broader study that the committee's embarked on with regards to passenger rights. One of the things we're realizing is that the Passenger Bill of Rights itself actually does a good job of outlining what the rights are of passengers. What we're finding out is that there may be an issue with the application of the fines and the punishments for not following those laws. So you're actually 100% right, and your listeners are right as well. We found out that few and far between are the fines issued to companies for not following the Passenger Bill of Rights. So that's something we're going to be addressing, which is why we've invited them to appear after tomorrow at committee for 5 hours of testimony. One of the things we're going to be looking at is you can have all the laws in the world, and they can be, the most detailed, specific laws as to what the rights are of Canadian passengers. But if there are no consequences, or the consequences to not following those rules and regulations are so meek that companies have basically just incorporated it into their cost of doing business, then they're not worth the paper that they're written on. And that's something that as the chair, and I know other members of the committee are going to be looking at on Thursday is, over the last couple of years since this Passenger Bill of Rights has been put in place, how many fines have actually been issued to companies for not following these rules and regulations that are very clearly outlined? And if they're not strong enough, then there's a role for us as government, for the committee, for the Minister of Transport, to put in place even stricter regulations and perhaps send a message to the Canadian Transportation Agency that you need to be providing even greater fines or being more strict with those that don't follow the rules. Now, the good news is, Elias, the Minister has said that this spring there's going to be a strengthening of the Passenger Bill of Rights. There's going to be new information put forward, which is really good news. And I think that the role that I have as the chair and the role that we have as the committee is providing them with the greatest amount of information through the testimony that we receive to allow them to know where are the shortfalls, what is not working here, and allow them to do their job with the strengthening of the Passenger Bill of Rights.
We're with Peter Schiefke. He's MP for Vaudreuil-Soulanges and chair of the Transit Committee that's looking at the mess that travelers faced in this country over the holidays. So, Peter, listen, what I've seen a lot from politicians is pointing fingers at the airlines, pointing fingers at Via Rail. With what you just said, the fact that the Air Passenger Rights Bill needs to be strengthened, can we say that some of the pointing has to be pointed right back at the government, that they passed a flawed bill that people said wouldn't do anything, and it turns out they were right? Should the government be taking some blame here?
So I would say that there's challenges that need to be overcome on all sides, and I think the first thing that I'm doing as chair and that we're doing as a committee is bringing everybody to the table. This isn't just about hanging the companies out to dry. We've got all the airlines appearing. We've got Via Rail appearing. We've got the airports, as I said, appearing. We've even got the Minister of Transport appearing, department officials, the Canadian Transportation Agency. The idea here isn't to lay blame. It's to say, look, let's bring to light what happened, figure out where we're failing Canadians, and then fixing it. I'll give you an example. When this is actually a year ago, it was brought to light that there literally are tens of thousands of complaints that have been filed to the Canadian Transportation Agency, and it was predominantly during COVID. They didn't have the resources to actually review all of those cases that were brought before them. So we put forward a budget proposal. The budget proposal asked for more funding for the Canadian Transportation Agency. They were awarded $11 million in last year's budget in additional funding to be able to get through that backlog. So I think you need to identify what the issues are and then put in place an action plan to resolve those issues and ensure that the chaos that literally thousands of Canadians experienced over the holidays doesn't occur again. And it's a work in progress. So I'm anxious to see what we're going to be able to present to the House through our study, and I'm anxious to see what's going to come of it with regards to what's going to be presented by the minister with regards to strengthening the Passenger Bill of Rights and figuring what more needs to be done here.
Well, I'm happy I'm talking to you, Peter, and not the minister. Sometimes I feel it's hard to get a proper answer out of the Minister of Transport, and to be very honest and to be blunt, with most Liberal ministers, they seem to go with talking points and another. I think you've strayed just a little bit more than a minister in your government. One last question for you this morning. I got to do this one quickly. I want to just talk about Via Rail and rail transit in this country, because it's atrocious. You know what the mess that happened over the holidays is because Via Rail relies on other people's lines. I know your government is now moving ahead with something called high frequency rail, which is a way of fooling people into thinking we're getting high speed rail, but we're not. It's going to be almost as slow but slightly more frequent. Do you think we should do a better job in this country at fostering an environment where we can have high-speed rail and really, big league, G7 type rail service like they have in Europe between our major cities?
I would agree 100% with that, Elias. I'm actually excited. I've been looking into what the plan is for the Windsor Corridor high-speed rail.
High frequency rail. And you know what? It will be faster. It will be somewhat faster. So I've looked into that because that was one of the questions that I had. It will be somewhat faster, but where the time is going to be saved is not having to stop. And I think you know this full well, not having to stop on the side of the tracks to let CP and CN trains go by, which is where you get significant delays. So, our hope is that with that $12 billion plus announcement that was made, and it's going to be built over the next decade, that we're going to be able to kind of bring us at least to some level comparable to what they have in Europe. No, it won't be. It won't be, Peter, because 4 hours and 15 minutes is not an hour.
I will say this. We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
I mean, Europe, they've led on this for decades. I think this is actually kind of our first step into the foray into high-speed or high-frequency rail, but much more needs to be done, and I would be the first advocate to say that we need to invest more in high-speed rail in this country.
Peter Schiefke is MP for Vaudreuil-Soulanges, chair of the Transit Committee, looking at the mess that commuters faced over the holiday season. Thanks so much for your time.
Thanks for having me on.